Joining us this Saturday. We are live, and this is our first Platica with Adelita Grijalva. And timely enough, we're going to be talking about Invest in Ed, because I think that this is one of the huge wins and one of the positive lights that have happened in 2020. This week, we celebrated the centennial of the 19th Amendment and the women's right to vote. And while acknowledging the importance of the Voting Rights Act in 1965, we're fighting for women's rights. And what was just so timely is that this, at the same time, Invest in Ed, a proposition fighting for students and teachers, is back on the ballot after being threatened and taken off. And it was a cheer. And we were very excited. I was so excited about this one. And so thank you to the thousands that circulated petitions, signed, fought to ensure that this vital initiative is on the ballot in November, giving voters the opportunity finally to dedicate funds specifically for our public schools here in Arizona. And so I am so fortunate to be joined by two of the organizers that they're both local Red for Ed representatives and both volunteer and represent Save Our Schools. And I'm with Wes Oswald and Chelsea Acree, and I'm going to talk about you guys because you're amazing. So I'll give you a little bit of a bio about both of you. Chelsea's been teaching for 10 years in Arizona and is currently teaching choir at Marana Middle School. We might make you start a little something, Chelsea. I think that'd be so cool. You became engaged in education advocacy during the teacher walkout in 2018 and has been involved ever since. And your mission, the Save Our Schools mission, is to educate the community about the current funding crisis and to empower community members and become advocates for strong public schools. So thank you so much, Chelsea, for taking some time this Saturday. And then I'm joined by Wes, who I know a little bit more because he's a teacher in TUSD. He's been teaching for 17 years, teaches at Monzo, which is right around the corner here from this headquarters that we're at. And you circulated hundreds and thousands of you. Not only did you personally circulate, but you also got a lot of people involved. And I'm sure Chelsea did the same thing. And you have currently, the last number I heard was 43 students. 43 students and a teacher of. And what grade are you teaching?
This year I'm teaching third grade, and like you said, 43 of them.
Oh my gosh. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that too. And so I think that we can go ahead and just kind of get started. And Wes, do you want to just start by telling us what is this initiative, Invest in Ed?
Yeah. Again, thank you, Adelita, for joining us. It's nice to be here with Chelsea, my partner, big time this summer in collecting signatures and organizing our community. So thank you for having us. Yes, Invest in Ed is a statewide ballot initiative that has been a long time coming. It is now called Prop 208. We all know it is Invest in Ed, but just yesterday it officially got renamed to Proposition 208. So we are yes on 208. And this is a proposition that would restore nearly $1 billion to public education across Arizona. And that funding would go very specifically to 50% is designated to go to certified staff members in terms of increasing their salary or hiring more certified staff members, people like teachers, nurses, and counselors. 25% of the money from Invest in Ed would go towards increasing pay for classified workers like bus drivers, cafeteria workers, and teacher aides. And the remaining 25% would go towards teacher mentor programs, career and technical education programs, as well as the Arizona Teacher Academy. So we're all so excited for this because our schools have been defunded for decades. And this is a really, really solid chance for us to restore a lot of the money that's been taken away from us. A lot of people want to know, where is that money coming from? And that money is coming from a 1% tax on income above $250,000. So if you make $249,000 a year in Arizona, you will not be taxed on this. If you make just over $250,000, anything above that amount will have a small tax on it. So it's a very small tax on extremely wealthy people. Mm-hmm. Anything you'd like to add to that, Chelsea?
No, that was great, Wes. But I know that one argument that I hear against giving more money to education is that people worry that it won't be spent well. that it'll go to administrators who already make too much money. And side note, I would argue that our administrators are some of the lowest paid in the country, but they do make more than teachers. And people worry. They say, this is our tax money going into this, and how do we know that it'll be spent to actually improve our schools? And Wes, you did a great job laying out exactly how it will be spent. So there's just a lot of accountability in this initiative, and the money will go exactly to everything that you just said.
Yeah, what I really like about talking about where funding goes, because I've been on the governing board for 18 and a half years, but I like to talk about when I was in school in 1989 at Pueblo High School, we were getting from the state about $9,000 per pupil in funding. How much are we getting now? $4,500 per pupil in funding. And that is not talking about the capital funds that have been decimated or Title I or any of the entitlement money that's coming from the feds. This is money directly coming from our state to fund schools. And when I talk about that, it's like, think about the cost of things now versus the cost of things in 1989. We didn't have computers for every classroom. We had a typing room. We didn't have the infrastructure needs that we need now. I mean, TUSD really, with this pandemic, realized very quickly how many of our children are in the digital divide with no devices at home and no connectivity at home. And so I'm glad that the city is looking at creating a space and Wi-Fi for areas of our town that don't have it. But quite frankly, we still have 4,600 students that don't have a device at home. And so I think that to me was really telling of the kind of poverty that we're dealing with in our district, but also but all over Arizona. I mean, we have stories from everywhere. I'm sure, Chelsea, you have stories from Marana Unified of specific students that that don't have, that are trying to access a Zoom class and being on Zoom all day on someone's cell phone. I mean, this is the reality of what we're dealing with. And it's been a didn't feel so slow, but a slow starvation of our public education system in Arizona. And so this is one way to turn the dial back to where it was, but that's still a deficit to where we need to be. So this is just one good step. And so I think that's important. How can we fight? How can we help get this initiative passed? What are some things that we can do, people that are watching that are just kind of wondering what we can do?
Well, for one, definitely plan on voting. Like I said, it will be Proposition 208. Plan on voting on it yourself. Please tell your friends and family to vote on it. I'm sure there'll be Facebook frames and social media optics and ways that you can show your support. There will be phone banking and text banking opportunities coming up, supporting local pro-public education candidates who are also running with Prop 208, also known as Invest in Ed. Since this just became news that we're on the ballot, a lot of the ways of supporting and helping are just starting to come to the surface. So please be on the lookout. And of course, you can visit investined.com to stay updated on any opportunities too.
And so I just want to take a minute to welcome people who are just joining us. We had a couple people just join us. My name is Adelita Grijalva on the governing board for Tucson Unified. And I wanted to talk a little bit and ask two experts to join me about Invest in Ed, the proposition Prop 208 that was just approved to be on the ballot. So we will have an opportunity as Arizonans to vote on it in November. And I'm joined by Wes Oswald, a teacher of 17 years in Tucson Unified, and Chelsea Acree. Am I Acree? Yes, pronouncing your name. Acree?
That's that one.
I'm so glad I asked. Acree, who is a teacher of 10 years in Marana Unified. And she also teaches choir, and Wes teaches third grade. And both of them are very involved in Invest in Ed as local representatives and organizers in Invest in Ed, and also with Save Our Schools and volunteering to make sure that people understand what the impacts are of the funding cuts and how it's hurt every individual teacher and classroom and student. And so, can you talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions when people look at ballot initiatives? TUSD has not been very successful in passing all of our ballot initiatives. I know Marana's had a little bit more success, but why do you think people don't vote for these kind of initiatives, and what can we tell them specifically about Invest in Ed?
I'll speak to that because my district, Marana, we actually have an override on the election this November. And so we have a lot of work to do because we're going to be asking voters to vote to pass an override for Marana and to pass Invest in Ed, which of course is statewide. And I think that voters sometimes get tired of being asked for money for education. Like every election and pretty much every year since this disinvestment started happening in Arizona about a decade or two ago, we are constantly asking for money. And I really think that that's a strategy being used by the people in power because they know that people will get tired of us asking. And there's this conception that you ask us all the time, so you must have plenty of money. We're always giving you money, but we're always getting scraps. It's never, we haven't had fully funded education in several decades now. So yeah, that's definitely a misconception. And another thing I wanted to point out is that overrides are generally for just that district. And so, it's just important, it's complex and it's important to know the difference. So the Marana override will only affect Marana taxpayers, and it will go to support students in Marana, and it will help with programs like athletics and fine arts. And it's actually renewing an override that we passed a while back. And so if we fail to pass it again, then our schools in Marana are going to take a huge hit with the budget. And then of course, Invest in Ed is statewide, and only the top 1% of taxpayers will pay anything if it passes.
Yeah.
I've heard another really common misconception, and I truly have no idea where it's coming from. It's not based in any sort of truth, but I believe the opposition is really going to come out and say that this proposition, Prop 208, Invest in Ed, will hurt small businesses and mom and pop shops. There's nothing in this proposition about that at all. Mom and pop shops are not generally extremely wealthy members of our community. As we've both mentioned, this will be a tax only on people who make above $250,000. And that is not your typical mom and pop shop. Those are extremely wealthy people in Arizona. I don't know anybody in that category. And again, it's income above $250,000. So this is not going to affect our favorite mom and pop shop owners. Many of them have kids in school, and they're suffering those effects too of disinvested public education. So this is going to benefit mom and pop shops. It's going to benefit our economy, and it's going to benefit our communities. This has no negative effects on small businesses.
Yeah, I heard that argument before anytime you talk about a bond or an override, automatically you have people coming out saying, well, what about our small businesses? And quite frankly, it is exactly why this initiative has to pass, because I personally don't know one person that makes over $250,000. An individual, I do not know. Maybe couples, maybe an entire household. If you have like multi-generational and you add everybody up together, you might come close, but I don't know one individual that makes over $250,000 that can't afford. If you're making over $250,000 as an individual, you can afford to give 1% to help education. And so it's going to be interesting to see who comes out against the initiative. I mean, I think it would be great in an ideal, perfect world. One, we wouldn't be having to ask for the funding, but two, we wouldn't have an organized campaign. So what I think we're going to have to do as a community is really make sure that people understand it and understand what the impacts will be. So as a parent of 3 kids, I've been asked every year to supplement things because we don't have them. Part of a PTO every year, fundraising, because our teachers need things that we just don't have the funding for. And in schools that have a really strong parent organization and partnerships with businesses, that's great, but it's still filling a tiny little hole of the big picture. And that's where it's harder, because I know just from watching the teachers that are working with my kids every day, that teachers deserve compensation for the work that they do. And it's just some of the narrative that has come out about wanting to force teachers back into a classroom because of this pandemic, and why teachers should be doing that because that's their job. No one signs up to be a teacher and have to risk their lives, literally their lives, to go to work every day. And so this is hard work. I mean, would you rather be in a classroom teaching, or would you rather be on Zoom? I mean, in a perfect world, I think that's a no-brainer question. So many teachers are saying that it's so much harder to conduct class on Zoom than it is to do this face-to-face and in person, because you can read your students. And so I see my fourth grade son's teacher flipping through pages. You can see her trying to read students' faces to see if they can understand, because it's hard to do this kind of distance with a screen full of little faces, some of whom you can't always see, some of whom you only see the top of their head. You know, it's just a difficult. What is this transition for the beginning of the school has been for you, Chelsea?
Oh, for me, well, I teach choir and I also teach dance, and those things are very hard to do online. And yeah, if you are on a Zoom call and you try to sing together, it doesn't work. It's utter chaos. And those lovely videos that you see of everyone singing together with their little squares, those take hours and hours of putting it together with special software.
Yeah.
So it's been tough, and something, you know, anyone that's been in the choir knows that a really special thing about choir is the community that you have when you sing with a group of people. And that's a big part of why I teach choir, is because I love building that community with my students and forming those bonds and having those shared experiences. And it's much harder online. I'm very happy that I can work safely and that my students can learn safely, but we're putting in so many more hours to try to figure out how to do this online. And so if, you know, anybody who says that teachers, you know, don't want to work is just living in a different reality and must not know a teacher, because I actually went part-time this year, but I've been working full-time hours, and all of my colleagues have been working every weekend, like 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. It's a lot of work.
Yep. Wes?
Yeah, like you said, I would so rather be working in the classroom, but I'm very grateful for the board and the decision making of TUSD that has said no, it's not safe. I mean, to me and to many teachers, that's a no-brainer. I would way rather be teaching in person, so I can monitor kids' work, give them high fives and hugs, and really understand them better. But like Chelsea said, teaching online has been a very steep learning curve. I've been working 12-hour days pretty much every day since the school year has started. I haven't worked 12-hour days since my first 5 to 7 years of teaching, which that's pretty standard when you're new at teaching. But 12-hour days, I thought I was done with those, but that is not the case now. There's so many new things to learn, programs to figure out, technology glitches to deal with. And as you mentioned, I have 43 third graders. So that is a lot of families to stay in contact with, to communicate with, and to make sure families are safe and learning. So yeah, the transition has been difficult, but I'm very grateful that me and my students are safe. And it's been amazing working with my little 8 and 9-year-olds who every day they are on Zoom 10 to 15 minutes early, and they have the hugest smiles on their faces, and they can't wait for story time. We're reading an amazing book called Hello Universe, trying to bring as many hands-on kinds of activities as possible so the kids aren't just doing what we're doing and staring at each other. We're using lots of manipulatives in math, trying out our breakout room so the kids can have some sort of connection in a more intimate setting. So I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but I would way rather be in person, and I'm looking forward to the time when that is safe.
Yeah. And why do you have 43 students? That's way above cap for any district.
I doubt this is a unique situation. I'm sure we'll be hearing of this more and more. But at my small school, Monzo Elementary, we have about 2 classes at each grade level. And over the summer, when our COVID cases were skyrocketing and we had no state plan at all for how to return to school safely, when to return to school safely. And we had 2 teachers, and I don't blame them at all. One teacher retired early, another teacher took a job elsewhere where she was guaranteed a safe working environment. So we are losing teachers one by one at our schools, and that's hurting our schools even further, which again speaks to the need for Prop 208 or Invest in Ed. So yeah, we've had tough times all around in Arizona and in education, and COVID-19 is just making it tougher.
Yeah, we actually have a really good question from the audience. Will this Invest in Ed benefit special education aides and teachers' aides?
Chelsea, why don't you take that one?
It absolutely will, and this is one reason why Prop 208 Invest in Ed is so needed. And I think a difference between the 2018 version, is that right, Wes?
Yes.
We have always, as teachers, we love our support staff and we respect them, and we know that schools do not run without support staff, teachers' aides, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, counselors, nurses, and many, many more. And these people can oftentimes make more money by going to work at a fast food restaurant than they can being, instrumental in a child's life. And we absolutely need them at our schools, and they're so often forgotten about. And so this initiative, 25% of the money that, by the way, if Invest in Ed passes, it would renew every single year, right? It would be a permanent, sustainable source of funding, and 25% of that funding would go directly to support staff. And it's written in, and so it can't, be transferred anywhere else. It would go to those people who so desperately need it.
So can you go over the percentages again, just in case viewers joined us late and didn't hear the breakdown of where the funding goes and what it's dedicated to?
Yeah, I can go over that again. So this is something a lot of people have asked about. A lot of people are saying, oh, I've voted for these things in the past, and I know the money's going to be misused. It's going to go to admin. It's going to go to this. And that is absolutely not the case with Invest in Ed. This is a voter protected initiative, which makes for some of the strongest laws in our state. So of the money, of the $1 billion approximately that would come in each year from Invest in Ed or Prop 208, 50% of that money would go towards teacher and other certified staff salaries, as well as provide money to hire more teachers and more certified staff like nurses and counselors. 25% of that money would go to classified staff, like Chelsea mentioned, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, teacher aides, some office staff. The rest of that 25% would go towards career education, so things like wood shop, mechanics in high school, as well as to the Arizona Teacher Academy and mentorship programs, which I think is very important because we have one of the highest turnover rates in our state for teachers because we have so many responsibilities placed on us, very little support, and the 49th lowest pay in the country. So I am all in with these percentages and how the funding for Invest in Ed or Prop 208 would go.
Yeah, you know what I thought was really telling is when we were talking about not opening schools. And our governor comes out saying schools have to reopen because they provide this vital source of community support, food, all kinds of physical therapy. I mean, schools were filling the gap for everything that's happening to our students. Yet we're 49th, and as soon as we reopened the state, as soon as he said, okay, the restrictions are off, I looked at the calendar and said, we're not opening schools. There's no way we can open schools in August. And here we are talking about, we're going to push off evaluating. In TUSD, and Chelsea, maybe you can chime in about Marana, but in TUSD, we're not even looking at the data and the possibility of reopening. We're looking at that in October, looking at it. That doesn't mean if we're where we are, we're continuing to stay the course, and we will all be home into 2021. What's going on in Marana, Chelsea?
Yeah, they've been taking a look at the metrics, and I've heard that we're looking at 6 to 7 weeks before we could even think about opening. So we will definitely be online for a while.
Yeah, that's kind of the situation that we're going to be into, I think. So can you talk a little bit about why you personally got involved in Red for Ed and Invest in Ed? And then I know that this initiative was on, I'm sorry, we have emergency services. This initiative was also on in 2018. And so maybe talk about why you got involved then, how you felt when that initiative wasn't successful in getting on the ballot, and how you feel now. Whomever would like.
I'd be happy to speak to that. So I dove into the Red for Ed movement in March of 2018. I've loved being a teacher as my career. I love working with students, but anybody who knows me well, I speak about the difficulties of being a teacher in our state. There was a long period of time where we got no raises for over 5 years. That was an especially difficult time to be a teacher. I remember being hired originally in TUSD about 14 years ago, and seeing the pay scale and being, wow, this is a viable career option. I'm starting with a modest salary, but every year I can expect to move up about $1,000 a year, and it's like, that will be a solid middle class salary, and I'm excited to have that. The year I was hired, the salary scale was frozen. I don't remember for how long, but it was a very, very long time. So I was stuck at a beginning year teacher salary for, I think it was somewhere between 5 and 10 years. And the raises we did get were very, very small. Nowhere near what the salary scale showed when I started teaching back in the mid 2000s. So back in March of 2018, I was looking at Facebook and I saw this brand new group come up called Arizona Educators United. And out of nowhere, something. And there was a call from leaders in Arizona Educators United to become a liaison. And instantly I was like, this is what I want to do. I've been complaining about this enough. Someone has a system in place to solve this problem. I am jumping in. So I got very involved in 2018 as the liaison at my school. We had walk-ins at least once a week leading up to our walkout. We had one full week where we had walk-ins every day, where we basically threw street parties at 7 in the morning with Arizona School of the Deaf and Blind. We would tag people's cars with their permission, of course. We had DJ speakers, we had photo booths. Activism is a lot of work, but if you make it fun, you make great connections with people. And so I got involved. Eventually, we had the walkout at the Capitol, which was so exciting. 75,000 people marching downtown Phoenix. And we made some progress there with our, I mean, I wouldn't even call it a raise, our kind of recompensation, or making up for years and years in which we were not given raises. We were not satisfied with what the governor came up with. So Invest in Ed 1.0 started in 2018. And me and people in Tucson really kind of led the charge across the state in showing people that this was important, in collecting, I think it was close to 100,000 signatures more than what we needed to make it to the ballot over the course of just over a month. In June in Arizona. As we all know, June is usually our roughest month in terms of heat and sun. So when it was kicked off the ballot in 2018, was very new to politics. I was devastated. I was surprised. I thought, how can this even happen? But I stayed with Red for Ed. I kept with it. I continued advocating for our students, organizing our community, and was very happy to find out that we would have a new, even more solid Invest in Ed 2.0 that came out in about February of 2020, which of course timing could not have been worse then, because right when the pandemic started infiltrating all of our lives here, But we didn't let that stop us. We collected over 400,000 signatures across the state, once again, doing it largely in June during a pandemic, wildfires raging around us, intense heat, and the community supports us. It was far more difficult this time because there's so few places these days where people are gathering. So Chelsea, my friends, and I, we had to be very strategic to find businesses and parks and other kind of off the beaten track or unintuitive places to collect signatures. And we still have such strong support. And I love our Tucson community that walk right up to us and say, we see your red shirts, we see your Red for Ed, how can we help you? And we say, sign here, please. And they readily would.
Yeah. It was it was so inspiring. I mean, you all were popping up like little stands all over the place. I really feel the only reason that I was able to collect any signatures to run for this position for supervisors is because of the example of teachers that were like, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And then Becky, Graysick set up a stand outside of her house and people were like, oh, I could do that too. That's a great idea. And everyone that has collected signatures since has done it that way, who's doing it safely. I mean, because it's just impossible to go to someone's door. Even people who are asking for information and say, can you just come drop it by the house? I'll knock at a door and step back and you could see the fear, like, oh my gosh, who's knocking at my door? So we're not an environment where we can do that kind of thing. So it's been really amazing. And everywhere you'd go, there would be like just a little makeshift setup with some cardboard boxes saying, did you sign Invest in Ed? And I was just joking with you, Wes, earlier that I don't know that you have any shirts that aren't red, because I think I've only seen you in one shirt that wasn't red in like the last 2 years. Like you're all in, and I can see it every time I see it. It reminds me. Yeah.
One of my
favorite
symbols that came up in 2020 with Invest in Ed was the ubiquitous ironing board. People had ironing boards set up everywhere because they're so portable. You can move them around. They're lightweight. So that was another fun symbol of 2020. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Chelsea.
No, it's true though, because you have to think of stuff in like the jar with sanitizer. Like, okay, we're gonna do that. Like, how do we do this economically and safely? It's been really interesting to get that stuff together. Chelsea, did you want to share your?
Sure. Well, I just want to add to what you were just saying, that I just think that's such a testament to teachers and their dedication and their ingenuity and how dedicated they are to the profession and to the institution of public education. Because if they weren't and they were tired of teaching and tired of not getting paid enough, they would just leave. They would move and teach somewhere else, or they would change professions. We have college degrees, so it's pretty easy to do. It's pretty easy to find a job that will pay us better and that will not run us into the ground and require us to work on the evenings and the weekends. But teachers are just dedicated. We realize, as do most people in Arizona, the importance of public education. It's, our democracy depends on it. Every single student in our state deserves a quality education, and no matter where they live. And we want to be teaching these students and these children and helping them to become good citizens and prepared workers to go out into the world and to be productive and to be productive members of our community. But my story is very similar to Wes's. It was the walkout and the beginning of the Red for Ed movement in 2018 that got me engaged and involved. And I'll just say that I stick with it because I'm really passionate about making the profession of teaching a more attractive career and making it sustainable so that people who are good at it and who are passionate about it can stay in it. The fact that, Wes has been teaching for, I think, 15 years and myself 10 years, that's unusual these days. I think most teachers quit after, between the first, second, or third year, because it's just, we're asked to do too much with too little. And so that's why I support Invest in Ed. That's why I gathered the signatures. I want to keep fighting to to support teachers, because I know that if we support teachers and we pay them what they deserve, then we won't have a teacher crisis. We won't have teacher flight. We'll have every single teaching position filled in our schools, and then our students will benefit directly from that. Education will increase in quality, and it's everything.
Yep. I really do believe it is the great equalizer. Yeah. And like public education opens doors for you that would not have been possible otherwise. And I tell the story of my own family. My tata's a bracero, and he came across from Mexico with this permission to work. And he met my nana, and they got married and had my dad and my two aunts. And her thing, she never spoke English, but her big push was education. It has to be about you getting good grades. She didn't read English, but she knew the difference between an A and a B. And that was, there were no accommodations in the house. It's like, you do nothing but school. And so as a result of that push, like in one generation, so from my dad to me, we went from my tata is a bracero, my dad is a congressman. The only way that happens is public education, one generation. And so for those, what was great for me and one of the best moments that I had is when I had my children all stand outside to do a walk-in at our school, Carrillo, or their elementary school. And we're standing out there with teachers, and all of their teachers were outside in red shirts. And they didn't quite understand it, but they were like, well, if Miss Herrera's out here, and Miss Barras is out here, then it has to be good for us to be out here too. So I loved it because they've been so excited about it. And then every Wednesday, they're like, we're wearing red shirts today, right? I'm like, we're wearing red shirts today, kids. Like, we're running out of red shirts, kids. But I just thought that was so moving because they were so happy to be out there to support their teachers and everybody that was out there, all the parents that were out there. And I did a couple times really early. Monzo starts really early, so you being out there at 7 o'clock with 3 kids was a little bit of a rough bump, Wes. But we were out there twice, I think, yes, like standing and cheering, and yeah, I thought that was really fun. And then after that, we would go to Carrillo and catch theirs because we have a little bit of a later start. So, are there any moments for you that just were especially satisfying up until this point of it having an actual proposition number, which makes it really official, of 208? What could either of you identify one moment that was like, okay, I know I'm doing the right thing. This is like, and teaching is a calling, and both of you have heeded the call and fought for this, because I do think that there is just a special place in heaven for teachers. I really do. More so now that we're in this pandemic and the patience that I'm seeing, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are so great. You deserve so much more.
I can think of a moment back in 2018 when we did the first Invest in Ed initiative. I was starting to get wind of some of our numbers of signatures that had been collected. And I knew the deadline was so quickly approaching. And I was like, we have got to amp this up. So some friends of mine locally started making these challenges. We did a local 3K throwdown challenge where we're looking to get 3,000 signatures in a weekend. We blew through that. We used tons of social media. We made goofy videos. We had props. We just made it so fun doing tedious work in the sun. And then the next week we did a statewide challenge. We called our 20K throwdown. And we just amped things up and just brought more and more and more people to join us, and met amazing groups, amazing individuals, amazing teachers, and amazing community members who are not teachers, who are not paid to work with kids, but know that our work is important. And doing some of those challenges were extremely exciting moments for me, just watching those petitions come in. We would do petition parties every week at American Eats Company, and just see stacks and stacks of petitions. We're like, we know we are effective. We are going to win. Never did I have any doubt that we weren't doing the right thing, but it was nice to be doing the right thing and seeing it be successful.
Yeah. Those stacks were impressive. That blew me away.
Yes.
The pictures of them were pretty amazing.
Never did I think a stack of papers would make me so excited.
It's a different kind of stack. Nothing you have to grade. Hooray!
Right.
Yeah, Wes, I think that, I have met so many teachers through Red Fred movement and through our organizing that, like you, I never would have known because we teach at different schools and different districts. And so teachers feel, I think, across the board, I think teachers feel a lot more empowered now than they did a couple of years ago. And we feel like we have power and support in one another, because sometimes you can feel very isolated when you're teaching. And then for me, I think just, my favorite moments have been really the conversations that I've had with community members. And it feels, it's very rewarding to go out and, even if we only got a couple signatures that day, but you would talk to somebody and you would hear what was going on at their kids' school and, hear what concerns they have. And it would be a chance to dispel myths, like, oh, but I heard this. And then I would say, well, in my school, and we would have a real face-to-face conversation, which I think is so much more effective than just like ranting online. So I love those community conversations. And I always kept that in mind because we were worried about making it all the way to the ballot, about being able to gather enough signatures during the pandemic. And because Invest in Ed was thrown off the ballot in 2018, we knew that was always going to be a possibility again. And I just always kept in mind, even if it doesn't make it to the ballot, we will have all these conversations, and the community will have we will have all grown through getting to know each other better.
So I think that we have all these rock stars that were all a part of this. Andrea Rickard is asking questions and Megan Morgan is asking questions. So I'm like, you guys, I think that you all have built together this such amazing group. But one of the questions that Megan asked that I think is a really good one and would love for one of you to answer is, the governor and several GOP legislators have already come out with statements in opposition of 208. Do you have any tips for responding through conversations with our community, especially online comments? Any tips on how to respond to the negative statements that are already coming out against it?
Yes. Okay. So I have a couple thoughts. So I think, just like I said, whenever possible, real life human conversations are better than online. And so I don't know, maybe engaging online isn't always the best way to convince people that this is, to get people on board with Invest in Ed. Maybe we should focus our time and energy on like creating opportunities to have real life conversations. It's harder now with COVID, but it can still happen. I know, so car painting has been a big part of our movement. And I just heard from someone the other day who had painted a message on their car, and they parked somewhere and somebody, saw it and asked them a question. And so that's a great way to spark some in-person conversations. I think another thing is, I just attended a webinar about fake news and how important it is to not comment on anything that's fake or negative to your cause, because you're boosting that. And so if you do want to engage online, I think the best thing you can do is to like create your own posts that are positive. And so sharing articles and teacher stories that are talk about Invest in Ed in a positive light is a really good thing. But I'm trying to think of what would be the main argument coming from the governor and some of those legislators. Do either of you know? Is it that they say that it's bad for business, or?
I think it's just, they're getting enough money. They're not going to spend it wisely. I think those are some of the things that are being said. Probably nothing really with any specificity yet. But I think that suggestion with, I support Invest in Ed, have questions, ask. I think that would be a really good one. And I should put that on my car.
Yeah. I can add to that. I have not heard, I know Ducey opposes this, but he opposes everything related to public education. He is not a public education supporter. He is so tied to dark money and dirty money interests that, of course, he's going to come out against this, because this small 1% tax is going to affect him and business interests. People in our community, they trust teachers. Teachers are for Prop 208. They're for Invest in Ed. Doug Ducey has never been a proponent or an advocate for public education. 2 years ago, really one of the main things that sparked the walkout was the fact that he kind of gave teachers a slap in the face with proposition to raise our salaries by 1%. And I think at that point, a lot of teachers were like, we have had enough. We've had no raises. And then after all these years, we're offered a 1% raise. And then he pivots to a 20% raise over the course of a few years, which, as Chelsea and I and many other teachers know, we're not seeing a full 20%. So he spins stories against public education. It's very easy to make public education look bad when we have some of the lowest funding in the entire country. But people trust teachers. Teachers are out there to help your kids, to help our community. And we know Doug Ducey doesn't, at least in terms of public education.
Go ahead, Chelsea.
I also wanted to say that everybody needs to check out the Invest in Ed website. It has, like, just in the past couple months, they've really revamped it and added so much pertinent information. So if you want to, like, get into the weeds and really learn about, things like they have a chart that shows you who will be taxed and what the average salaries are of certain professions in Tucson. And there's, like, a dentist is on there, I think, and a lawyer, and showing you that those people won't be included in this. And there's also some great studies that came out about how this will affect businesses, and just really, really great information on the website. And so I would encourage everybody that's watching this to go to the website and take a look at that information. And you can also share it with people who are skeptical and who want to know more. It's a really, really good resource. And for some people that, they want to talk about numbers, but kind of echoing what Wes said, and I hear this over and over again, we have to share our stories, because nobody can, disagree with our stories, and stories are powerful. And so if somebody says, well, it seems like we're always giving money to schools, and I heard we gave them a couple of $1 million just last year. We have to be telling our stories about all of the things that we don't have in our classrooms, all of the resources that our students don't have, and how many empty classrooms are at our schools because we can't hire teachers to work there. And I think that that's extremely powerful.
Yep. Wes?
And even speaking again to people coming out against Prop 208 or Invest in Ed, one of the biggest reasons that businesses choose ultimately not to lay their foundations in Arizona is because they know that our school systems are so underfunded. So Prop 208 passing, Invest in Ed, when that makes it through, businesses might reconsider starting up in Arizona because we will have a better funded school system. A lot of people are also asking, while I was collecting signatures, a lot of people would ask me, will this affect charter schools too? And yes, charter schools in Arizona are considered part of the public school system. So teachers, educators, certified and classified staff will also benefit the same as district teachers from Prop 208.
So one of the things that, because we're almost out of time, I can't believe how fast it went. But before we kind of wrap up, I do want to make sure that people are very aware of the voting information for Pima County. So it's safe and secure to vote by mail. It is. That is a complete strategy to try to suppress voter turnout. And so it is safe and secure. There is a way for you to do it. You can monitor when your ballot gets to the Pima County Recorder's Office. So I encourage you to do it. Election Day is going to be November 3rd, which is 72 days away. I can't believe that it's only 72 days away. And the ballots are going to be mailed out to voters on October 7th, which is 45 days from now. And so the voter registration deadline to register for this election is going to be October 5th. So we have 42 days to get people who our pro-public education advocates to make sure that they register to vote and vote, and then they'll get their ballot really very shortly thereafter. But a lot of people are talking about going and taking their ballots and dropping them in a drop box, which is something that was available for this primary election, and I'm assuming that it will also be available for the general. But does anyone have any, I know that we at the Grijalva headquarters are going to start canvassing next week. And if we don't have literature yet about Prop 208, we're going to kind of make some sort of paper connection to like remember to vote and to send people to the Invest in Ed website, because that's pro-public education. Everyone here is supportive of education, and we need to make sure that this proposition passes. But we are going to have a no contact lit drop next Saturday from 8 to 12, and we're going to do a little video, so we'll show people what to do, and this is what it is, just so we kind of demystify what it looks like to get engaged that way. I'm sure InvestInEd is going to have robocalls and phone banking, and we're going to have literature. Do either of you know anything about literature or yard signs? Because I know Andrea was asking for a yard sign.
I know that there will be some new yard signs printed up. They're not available yet, but Andy, I think I might have a yard sign I can give you. I'll take care of you, Andy.
I was on the website this morning, and there on the InvestInEd website, and there was, you could sign up to be sent a yard sign or notified when they're ready.
That's great. So I'm hoping we'll get a little stack here and get a new one. We have InvestInEd signs in the headquarters, but I'm sure that I would love to have a big vote yes on Prop 208. We'll make one if we don't have one. Any final comments before we get going? One, I want to thank you both for taking the time this Saturday, just an hour out of your day, to really push people to register others to vote for Prop 208, Invest in Ed. I think that it will be a really great turning point for our state if we're able to pass this. And with the dedication that was put in 2018 and 2020 to get the signatures to get on the ballot, I have no doubt the educators and pro-public education advocates in our community are going to get organized really quickly and help the rest of our community to do that. But Chelsea, is there any last kind of parting thought as we're finishing up here?
Well, thank you so much for having us and for having this conversation today. And I just want to encourage people to be engaged between now and the election. And if there's anything, if you have reservations or questions about InvestInEd, just to reach out and have a conversation, and to talk to everybody too. I think it goes a long way to reach out to your friends and family and to ask them if they're registered to vote, and to say, hey, InvestInEd is really important to me, and I'm going to be voting for it, and what do you think about it? And I think this is a historic opportunity to vote for Prop 208, and it's the opportunity to be a historic election in a lot of ways. And so I just really hope that people take the time to get engaged.
Thank you, Chelsea. I hope so too. I think that based on the turnout for the primary, people are ready to just focus some energy and make some really significant changes in Pima County and in Arizona. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to push Prop 208 over the finish line and make sure that our schools get the much needed influx of funding that they deserve. Wes, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, it's been great spending middle of the day with you too. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
And I want to make a call out to parents. I mean, most parents in Tucson and elsewhere in Arizona, you've probably had your kid in a public school, and it's probably been at least once where they have been, or likely way more than once, they've been in an overcrowded classroom, sometimes where there's not even enough desks for them. I know that many parents have had their kids in a classroom with no teacher or with no certified teacher. It's so sad to see in public schools all over the place, many classrooms that do not have a certified teacher, and it is being run by a rotating cast of long-term subs, which we appreciate their services, but we need expert professionals to do this important work. And Prop 208, yes on Prop 208, Invest in Ed, that will solve this problem. It will open the floodgates for money to come into our schools and to give teachers and teaching assistants and educators the salaries they deserve, because we're currently not getting that, and that's keeping quality people from the classroom. And ultimately, the people paying the cost for that are our children and our community. So vote yes on 208. Say yes for our community and yes for our students.
Yes, Chelsea. Thank you, Wes. Thank you. I agree. Thank you.
Just one more thing. We know that Arizonans care about education and that improving the quality of education is a priority for them. There has been poll after poll that shows that, and that's why the opposition is going to come out against this, is because they know that we have the support. They know that we want to pass this, and that's why we've had to fight so hard to get it to the ballot. So I just want to, it's not, we know that Arizonans, we know that we have your support. We know that people care about education. So we just need to get the word out. The support is there. And so let's get it done.
Yep. And I think that what we really have to do is make sure that we get the turnout. People need to vote. They need to vote as soon as they get their ballot. They need to make sure to run it down. Either you can take it down yourself. I mean, to the post office. You don't want to wait with the middleman. I mean, one of the things that I heard really clearly, repeatedly, is there is a way for you to monitor where it goes. You can follow, you can track it, you can see where it is. So my hope is that people won't get dissuaded by voting early, because I think that that's the best way for us to ensure that we have the turnout that we need, because it is still going to be an unsafe environment on November 3rd. It's still going to be difficult to go into a polling place and vote. This was actually, I was saying, the first time that I voted early and got on the permanent early ballot, because I love going into the poll. It's the experience. I take my kids. It's I want them to be engaged civically, and that's the easiest way. And you get that cool sticker. They give you a voting early sticker. It's okay. I mean, it's not the same experience, but what's most important is that my vote counted, and it was heard very clearly based on all of the changes that we saw in the primary election results. But I want to thank you both very much for being here. I want to remind people to go to Invest in Ed. And can you repeat the website so we can get people to go directly there?
It's investined.com.
Investined.com. We're going to have information and a connection on Adelita for Supervisor.com. And just a reminder that we will have a no contact lit drop, so you can pick up your packet, do it throughout the week, starting next Saturday from 8 to 12. I want to thank Wes and I want to thank Chelsea for spending some time with us to talk pro-public education. Both of you are amazing advocates for public education. Thank you for all you're doing every day for generations of our babies. The impact is going to be huge. And when we get this passed, we're going to be able to celebrate big time. But thank you so much for just taking time. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you. And really thank you to everyone that was watching and all the really positive comments. You all have some amazing fans out there. They just keep sending me messages about thank you so much for having the two of them on. So I'm really appreciative of your time. Thank you. Let's all stay engaged, stay updated, and let's pass Prop 208.
Yes.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Stay safe, everyone.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chelsea.